The following is a presentation from PokerStars.com.
For me, it started small.
From pool halls in Toronto to poke rooms in Las Vegas.
It's given me a life
I never could have dreamed.
The game has taken me around the world. I've seen it all.
From the Windy City to Sin City, this game can make you a legend.
This game can make you a champion.
It may have started small.
It may have started
But now, it's the big game.
This is the next generation.
It doesn't get
any bigger than this.
This is the PokerStars.com Big Game.
Welcome to the newest big game in Las Vegas. Alongside Joe Stapleton, I'm Chris Rose. Tonight, some of the most talented, creative, and boisterous poker stars go head-to-head for big-time bucks. We haven't even dealt a card yet, and there's already $1 million on the table.
Once again in the sixth seat, he's back. All 6'5" of the poker brat, Phil Hellmuth. He's brought with him $100K.
He's cut his hair since last we saw him, but Jason Mercier's poker star continues to grow. He's in for 100 large.
To the right of Jason, one of the game's great new thinkers, Ike Haxton, also brings $100K to the table.
That's nothing compared to what Tony G has in store for the rest of the table. He has brought in for the largest amount yet, $500,000.
In the two seat, everyone's favorite poker-playing prestidigitator, that means magician Antonio Esfandiari, sits with $100K.
And lastly, in the one seat, our loose cannon Russell Harlow. He's been staked $100,000 this week to go against the world's best. The family man from the state of Connecticut is with our own Amanda Leatherman.
Russ, you have 3 young kids at home. You work the graveyard shift delivering baked goods. If you won a bunch of money here, what do you think you'd do with it?
I mean, one of the things that I've dreamed about is having a proper bankroll so that, I can play cards and do the things that I have to do without interfering with household stuff. And then, of course, there's a ton of things we'd love to do with the money. Buy a minivan, put some tires on the car. I mean, a lot of, regular stuff.
Regular stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand that Sundays at your house, a little special.
Right. Before I get to leave for work at midnight, I tuck the kids in when they go to bed, and they say, Daddy, is tomorrow donut day? Because they know Sundays, I always bring home a dozen donuts. It's not even Sunday, it's donut day.
I want to live at your house.
It's fun.
All right, good luck, Russ.
Thank you.
Once again, each loose cannon is staked $100,000 and keeps all winnings above the initial $100,000. At season's end, the loose cannon who's won the most money earns a North American Poker Tour passport worth $50K.
Right now, Russ is driving that donut truck chasing Nadia Magnus, who walked with $63,600.
Oh my God, here we go, boys.
Here we go.
We have cards.
Let's light this candle.
Cameras and this and that.
So this hand counts, right?
No mulligans, first tee shot plays. Haxton, 9-8, folds. Mercier's out. Phil, Ace-6.
Pot. What is it?
It is pot limit pre-flop. Phil raises to 2,000.
You got a nice hand to start with, so?
The needling has already started.
These two have quite a history.
The cannon folds. Jacks for Esfandiari, who calls. And Tony G's in as well.
Can you beat ace-9 offsuit? I know you can, Tony.
I can't. That's for sure. I wish.
Phil has Tony dominated, but Antonio has them both in bad shape.
The flop, 10-8-10, a gut shot for Tony G. Antonio's still with the best hand, and he's first to act.
Antonio probably likes his hand on this board.
So much so, he leads out, betting 4,400. Tony G folds.
Antonio doesn't want to give a free card, and on a board like that, he knows he can get called by ace-high. Phil might think he has the best hand in this spot.
Raise it.
Announces a raise to 14-4.
Antonio can't really like the flop raise, but the likelihood that Phil has him beat on that board is pretty slim. Now, if Phil had a good hand here, there wouldn't be a real point in raising. There's only a couple draws to protect against, and we all know Phil's a big trapper.
Antonio calls, and it's already a juicy pot.
Good game, you see.
The turn, 3 of spades. Esfandiari checks.
Antonio's checking to the aggressor. He might like his hand, but he doesn't want to bet and get raised. That would make him more likely to be playing for his whole stack on the river. Phil's got to decide if he wants to fire another barrel. If Antonio had something Phil thought he could fold on the flop, that 3 probably didn't help him.
Phil bets 17,000.
This is more indicative of the kind of bet Phil would make if he really did like his hand. Antonio is probably realizing that making this call will basically put the rest of his stack in play on the river on the very first hand of this game.
Antonio calls.
Phil's got a pretty slim chance of actually making the winning hand.
The river, the 5 of diamonds. Antonio checks.
We've got almost $70,000 in this pot, and Antonio has stuck with Phil the whole way. If Phil wants to win this pot, he will have to fire a third barrel. Phil's trying to decide if he can make Antonio fold and just what that perfect size barrel is to get the job done. The Winchester, the 12 gauge, or the howitzer.
Wow. Sorry I'm taking so long, guys.
Tony seems cool with it.
Phil finally bets 22 grand.
Should get an Academy Award for that one.
Phil's chosen to make a fairly small bet, less than 1/3 of the pot. Antonio could interpret this as a classic Hellmuth extra value meal, and he's not loving it.
Ace 10, huh?
Nope.
Translation, OMG, please fold.
And OMG, Antonio does.
Show the bluff, Phil. Bluff?
That's a nice start for you, Phil, isn't it? Beautiful.
Yes, yes.
Lots of fireworks on the first hand of the night. Time to look at the rules of the big game. Each table lasts exactly 150 hands. The action pre-flop is pot limit, then no limit after the flop. Blinds are 2 and 400 with a $100 ante, all of which is paid by the player on the button. And every player begins with at least 100 grand, but can reload for up to $500,000.
And Tony G wins the Season 1 Sicko Award for being the first player to actually buy in for 500 grand.
Phil, after bluffing his way to victory, looking at ace 5, raises to 2,000.
You're the man.
The cannon, ace queen.
Russ has got Phil dominated.
Get him loose.
Here he comes.
Get him loose, cannon.
Russ just calls. Antonio's out.
Here he comes.
So's Tony. Ike follows. Jason's down.
Phil's a 3-1 dog to the loose cannon.
10 queen 6. Harlow top pair.
Phil may run into some resistance if he tries to bluff this one.
He doesn't. He checks.
Let's see if Russ gets aggressive with top pair.
He does, firing 3,200. And that gets Phil to fold. So the cannon picks up his first pot of the night.
How did it feel being in a pot heads up with the greatest living no-limit hold'em player of all time? How did it feel?
And winning.
It was just nice to win. Take down the first one. Let's just play.
Do you have like ace queen or something? Right?
I wish it was that good.
You look like you hit the flop. I had a hand again.
Some creative truth-telling going on out there.
I think he could lay down a 10.
Could have.
Because he was thinking ace 10. It looked like ace 10. I actually felt he had ace 10s.
Action folds over to Phil. The small blind.
Phil knows it's just him against one other player, and that other player is the loose cannon.
Raise at 11.
Sorry.
11, I said. Raise 11. Yeah.
So that's a raise to 1,500. King queen for Harlow.
King queen is a very strong hand against Phil's range in this spot. Doesn't look like Russ is going anywhere.
He re-raises.
All right.
You have a friend.
Correct. 51 is the raise.
To 5,100.
Raise the pot.
And Phil re-pops.
11,000. Whatever it is.
10-8 more.
10-8.
To 15,900.
Now, despite what he's showing us tonight, Phil's got a nitty reputation, so the loose cannon would have to be playing very loose to make this call. Calling 4-bets with king-queen is generally not a winning play.
And Harlow folds.
Wow.
It's 1-1. Did you have your oatmeal this morning, Phil? I've never seen you play this many hands in my whole life of playing with you. These three haven't.
It's easy when you have aces every hand.
I mean, what is going on there?
The big game is just heating up. More from Las Vegas coming your way after this. We are back and just starting a new week of the big game. This party of 6 includes online qualifier Russell Harlow. The father of 3 wants to roll in the dough against the big names. Wait, that's what he does for a living.
My name's Russ Harlow. I'm from Manchester, Connecticut. I'm an overnight delivery driver for a bakery company. We deliver croissants, bagels, donuts, the whole deal. I work midnight to 8, so it's like I'm sleeping when I should be working, and I'm working when I should be sleeping, to try to give our family life a little bit of balance. Well, I've got 3 kids, ages 7, 5, and 3. I love them to death. My wife and I have been married for 11 years, and it's really just about taking care of family, making sure things are good at home. And so whatever I have to do is what I do. Sometimes it means playing cards to supplement my income a little bit, or working the graveyard shift because it's a tough economy. My wife and I, we sat down and talked about what would be some of the things we'd want to do. Certainly, you try to get out of debt. We're looking to move into a new house, but the house needs a roof. It's just life. Those things are still going to happen. It just would be a whole lot easier with a big pile of cash. My name's Russ Harlow, and I'm on the big game.
Bet Russ's wife and kids are hoping he brings home the dough for a change.
Aha, well played. Action begins with Jason Mercier, who folds. Phil did as well. Harlow, ace-8.
It's been folded to him. He's in late position.
The fabulous Baker boy raises to 1,700. Tony G, pocket 6s, calls. King-8 suited for Ike.
Ike's got good odds to defend.
And he does.
You get 2 customers.
3 players.
Non-believers.
We believe.
They're out there.
The 6s aren't there. Phil folded one.
7-9 queen. Tony's hand still best. He checks. Haxton checks. And Harlow checks. The turn, 5 of diamonds, gives all 3 a gut shot.
Tony still has the best hand with his pair of 6s. Checked around on the flop, so Tony may like his hand now.
Likes it enough to bet 4,500.
Ike's not getting good odds, and they're even worse with those 6s out.
Ike folds.
Russ has got the same bad odds.
He folds.
Easy money.
I had the best hand. I had the key card.
6 of clubs.
Yep, story checks out.
I was committed.
You had my out blocked.
It sounds like an uncomfortable trip to the doctor's office. An uncomfortable trip anywhere.
Do a straddle, Phil. Just me and you do it every time.
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen, the hand with which Phil Hellmuth Jr. won the first of his 11 gold bracelets. That's 11, my friends.
How many?
1-1. One more than 10.
You limping in this time, Phil?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's better. Now you're back to your normal game.
Yeah, check, limp, fold. Limp, miss, fold,
Now you're back to your normal sort of game.
Tony raises.
Punish him, Tony G.
Oh, just building the pot for him.
Ike's got the best hand of them all with these 2 jokers in the pot in front of him. Pocket 10s look like a monster in this spot. We could see action Haxton pull a little Carl Weathers here.
Pot is 8, right?
That's correct.
Haxton re-raises to 8,000.
From that position, this raise looks very strong. He's raising 2 people who don't like folding to 3 bets, and he's out of position. Phil might think he's racing, but we know he's crushed.
Phil folds. And Tony too.
I don't know why we won't waste the time, Phil.
I had a big pair, that's why.
Big pair, like kings. Is that a big
Two
pair?
nines I limped in with, so you'd go crazy. Of course. I wasn't going to limp till I was strong, because I know
Two
you're gonna
nines
raise
was
it.
probably the best hand.
I felt like maybe he had tens or jacks.
Nail meet head.
I believe it.
Tony, look, I mean, what do you want me to do? I mean, you know,
I don't want you to do
limped to let
anything.
you
You know,
raise. It was perfect.
You're the
so-
best player in the world. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what
No, I
to
mean,
do.
if you had like 10 jack and you hit a 10, it comes 10, 4, 5, you're going to win a big pot. But
Raise, make it 2,000.
No one's going to tell you what to do.
I wanted to gamble with you.
But I think two nines, it's worth it. It's worth the stress.
I lost 400.
I understand.
Tony is raised to 2,000. Ike with big slick.
Wow.
You raise
Re-raises.
7,200.
Action folds to the original raiser.
Straight.
Ike's in position. Let's see if Tony can fold to a 3-bet 2 hands in a row.
You got it.
He can.
Tony showed Ike a lot of respect there. He would not fold Jack 10 to Phil. I can guarantee you that.
Ike wins his second straight small pot.
If I was drinking, I'd be calling.
Start drinking.
It's too early.
If there's like 30 hands to go, I might stick 8,000 with 2 nines.
30 hands? Is that like you're playing a tournament? This is never ending. It doesn't never ends. Unfortunately.
Oh, it never ends between Phil and Tony, and that's the way we like it here on the Big Game. Welcome back to our state-of-the-art poker room here on the Big Game. And Joe, let's check out those stacks through a dozen hands.
Well, the 11-time bracelet winner, Phil Hellmuth, is up 38K in bluff and chips, much to the disdain of fooled magician Antonio Esfandiari, who is down 31K. Other than Phil and Ike, the rest of the table is in the red.
Alongside Joe Stapleton, I'm Chris Rose. So, Joe, what do you make of our loose cannon so far?
Russ seems pretty natural at the table, but he still comes across a little timid to me. Even if he's not, these guys will see him that way anyway and try to take advantage, just like Phil Hellmuth did.
And how about good old Phil? I know it's early, but it looks like he's had an extreme poker makeover.
Phil is playing super aggressive pre-flop so far and putting others to the tough decisions rather than himself.
Might the old Phil make an appearance?
If you mean the Phil Hellmuth that throws chairs, then God, I hope so.
Let's get back to the table where Antonio and Phil are reminiscing about Esfandiari's fortunate path to winning his lone World Series of Poker bracelet in 2004.
It's so beautiful.
It probably cost me my 12th bracelet. And you were on with deuces against jacks or something.
Eights, deuces against eights, get it right.
And you hit a deuce on the river. That was also at the final table. God knows what you did all those other days to get there.
But Phil looking at Queen Jack.
That's my style, Phil, you know?
Raises to 2,000. 9-7 for Russ Harlow on the button.
Looks like Russ is itching to play. He's in.
I like Russ Phil Hellmuth wars. They're kind of, it's 1 and 1. Let's see, you know.
Yeah.
Oh.
And 1.
Pocket pair for Tony G.
I'll raise it.
Re-raising.
I think we got a poker game, Jason. I haven't been participating yet.
6,500 more.
Phil might be onto the fact that Tony might be trying to isolate Russ.
Raise the pot.
Raise.
Hellmuth over the top to 28-3. That gets a chuckle out of the magician.
Russ got out of line a little bit here. Now he's caught in the middle.
Yeah, apparently Russ didn't think it was as funny, so he folds.
Uncharacteristically, Phil's been firing light a lot today, but even more uncharacteristically, he hasn't been showing it off, so no one's really got a clue.
Tony G lays it down.
Too good.
No, Phil's actually been great, winning 3 of 13 hands with bluffs pre-flop.
Phil hasn't backed down to anyone, never folding to a 3-bet. He's also dressed like a cat burglar, so I guess it's only fitting that he's attempting to steal 100% of the time. And he's taken down almost a quarter of our hands tonight without seeing a flop.
I really thought you might just give me 140,000 there.
Okay.
That looks like it sits well with Tony G.
That was the sound of a man turning on his internal mute.
King 6 suited for the cannon who folds.
I mean,
Esfandiari's out. Tony G, ace 7. Raises to 2,000. Ike on the button, out of here. Pocket pair for Jason Mercier, who's been awfully quiet so far.
It's just a baby pair, but he's ahead of Tony's cutoff range.
And calls. Whoa, pocket kings for Phil.
Raise pot.
Raises to 8,600.
Now Hellmuth's got a real hand. Let's see if his giving action will get him some.
Not from Tony.
Tony G folds to another Hellmuth 3-bet. Can somebody please call for cocktails? Jason's got good implied odds to try to flop a 3, and he doesn't know this, but Russ folded a king.
You had a couple of hundred on, and I'll play every time pre-flop. Why don't you add some more money on, Phil? I'll give you a flip every time then. See what sort of a genius you are then.
Tony would rather flip a coin for $500,000 instead of a measly 100K.
Jason calls. So Phil does get some action.
Jason's a big dog here.
9-queen tray. Mercier flops a set and checks to Hellmuth, who has a flush draw.
Mercier boo-coo. Phil probably doesn't even think he needs to hit the club.
Phil checks.
Trying to control this pot.
Queen on the turn, giving Mercier a full house. He checks.
Such a good card for Jason. Phil's clubs are now dead too.
Phil bets 7,000.
Yum, yum. Jason's probably thrilled that Phil's finally put some money in this pot. He missed a check raise on the flop, but he's getting a second chance at it now.
Jason raises to 20,700.
This is a tough decision for Phil. The board doesn't look too bad for 2 kings. Jason's known for running some pretty sick bluffs, and Jason knows Phil could be making his bet on the turn with nothing but ace high. You with me, Rose?
I'm with you. The question is Phil following?
Oh, you got 9s full?
Close.
I got a bad feeling about this. Have you ever seen like the Star Wars movies where the guy, Harrison Ford, always says, I have a bad feeling about this?
I think he says it in Indiana Jones as well, and Jason Molara Mercier over there is about to pluck your heart out.
Phil calls and hits a flush on the river.
Jason's got Phil in really bad shape right now. It's just a matter of how big a value bet he wants to make.
Come on.
Mercier all in.
Come on, what in the heck is going on here? This is ridiculous. This is what happens to me when I play in these frickin' cash games.
Now you're back to yourself. That's better.
I couldn't hold it in.
I was worried I lost you.
God, this is so brutal.
Jason's betting big here, having a pretty good idea Phil's got a premium hand.
How much is it?
67.9.
Jason could have maybe bet a little bit less, but in a pot this size, there's not much difference between 40,000 and 67,000. If Phil had 2 aces with the ace of clubs, he'd almost assuredly make this call.
But Phil folds.
That's a one we gotta show.
Phil gets away from it and saves himself almost 70 grand.
Felt like a sick bluff, sir. Sick. Or pocket 9s. Either or.
God, that's so brutal. Could have been worse. If I bet the flop, I'd just ship it with him.
Who wants to tell Phil he made the right read? Nah, that's no fun. Welcome back to Las Vegas, Nevada, home of the big game.
You know, Antonio, I think he bluffed him. I think he had Jack 10 of spades.
Still talking about that
Jack
last
10 of
hand
spades?
between Jason and Phil.
The river was time.
I'm leaning towards the bluff, I really am.
Good thing the king didn't come.
I mean, he said he was going to make a big call.
He was talking about it, and he knew he couldn't do it.
Phil folded kings to Jason's full house.
All talk.
Action on Ike. Ace 9.
Devastating. That was devastating blow to you, Phil. To your confidence, to everything.
Devastating blow. I lost with kings, so what?
If it wasn't devastating before, Tony's trying to make sure it is now.
Big slick for Jason. Raises to 1,600. 9-5 for Phil.
Pot.
Re-raises to 6,000.
Looking devastated to me.
Tilt. Tilting up now.
Phil's as transparent as a piece of glass right now.
The cannon, queen 6 folds.
The good thing about pot limit is you don't really have to think about bet size and just pot.
Yeah, you just pop it in.
Jason's chances of folding are slim and none. We might see a 4-bet.
No 4-bet, just a call.
Even though ace-king suited is such a strong hand, you can see it's not that big of a favorite.
The flop, tray 4, jack 2 hearts, Hellmuth with a flush draw. Mercier checks to Phil.
Jason checks to the aggressor. This is a pretty decent flop for Phil. It's a good spot for a semi-bluff continuation bet.
Nope, just a check. 7 of hearts on the turn, Hellmuth with a 9-high flush.
By checking behind, Phil has disguised his hand like Wile E. Coyote painting a tunnel onto a brick wall.
Mercier has checked.
Phil looks like he's going to extract some value here.
$68.
Yep, bet 6,800.
Jason's got no piece of this board, but with Phil steaming, it's always possible Phil's got even worse.
Mercier calls.
Now, it might look like Jason's firing money into the abyss, but a lot of the time, he's going to have the best hand in that spot.
5 of spades on the river, Mercier checks.
The way Jason's played it, Phil might think Jason has a better hand than he does.
Hellmuth bets 19 grand.
The only way Jason can make this call is if he puts Phil on a stone-cold 4-barrel steam bluff. And that would be a decent read since Phil was steam betting until he happened to make his hand.
And look at Phil, Joe, doing the Scott Seaver pose.
Even the great one can learn from someone.
Mercier folds. Nice bounce back hand for Phil Hellmuth.
That's why he has 11, and we have 1.
The 11-time bracelet winner started this hand a little steamy, but it worked out in his favor.
We've seen an uber-aggressive Phil Hellmuth from the very start. Let's relive the very first hand of the night as Phil takes us behind the poker face.
Well, I couldn't believe it. Hand number 1, I had ace-6 and decided to open for 2,000. Play a little bit more aggressive this time out, and I was called by 2 players, and the flop came 10-10-8. Antonio bet out 4,400, and I said, well, it just looks a little weak. Maybe he has an 8. Maybe he has, 2 6s or 2 7s. Let me go ahead and raise it. So I raised him 10,000 more. He called fairly quickly, which told me 2 things. 1, that obviously he had my hand beat, and number 2, that he didn't have a 10, because I think he would have studied a while longer with the 10 there. On the turn, off came a 3, and he checked to me, and I thought, man, you have to put some heat in him in case he has an 8, in case he has 2 7s, in case he has 2 6s. You have to bluff this one more time. So I bet 17,000. Now, at that point, he called me, and I was kind of done with it, except one thing. He called really quickly. The fact he called quickly told me he wasn't strong. Sometimes people call quickly to make you think they're strong. And so at that point, I thought he's not strong. And by not strong, I mean that he didn't have a 10. But he knows that I'm not going to be bluffing there. He knows that if I'm betting 17,000, I'm not betting an 8. So I either have jacks beat or I don't. The river, unfortunately, was a 5. And now he checked again, and I sat there with 22,000 in front of me, thinking forever. And I thought if I bet 40,000 or 44,000, he's going to call me. So what would I bet if I had a 10? What would I bet if I had 2 aces? So I bet 22,000. So he's studying, and he said,
Ace 10?
I said, nope, I don't have ace 10. I felt like if I would have been quiet and not interacted with him, he would have called me. He would have seen right through it. But he kept looking at my eyes, and I was shocked when he folded. I was so happy, and I thought, all right, you manned up, you did it right.
Let's remember, Antonio was holding jacks. Joe, I do kind of wonder how Phil would be feeling and playing had Antonio manned up and made the call on the river.
Well, I think at that point, the only guy who would be manning up would be the guy with his finger on the bleep button.
Action on the liar, Phil Hellmuth. And I mean that in the most respectful way.
Phil's deception's been profitable for him today.
He folds. The cannon, pocket jacks.
Let's see if he fares better than Antonio did.
Russ raises to 1,400. Antonio folds. Pocket pair for Tony G. Calls. Ike, suited in the small blind, folds. Jason Mercier, 6-5.
Jason's out of position with a hand that's likely to be behind, but he looks like he wants to play a pot with the loose cannon, maybe.
Yes, he does. 3 to the flop, which is deuce 4-3. Tony G flops middle set. Mercier flops the nuts straight and checks.
What a flop. Everyone probably thinks they have the best hand, including Russ, who has an overpair to the board.
He bets 4,000.
Russ is playing it right, but it's going to cost him.
Tony G raises to 12,000.
Jason has got to be licking his chops. Not only does he have the nuts, but there aren't even any bigger draws out there. He has to figure out if either opponent's hand is strong enough to call a raise. We know Tony's is. He doesn't want to chase away all his customers, but a flat call would look pretty strong, too.
One thing we're lacking is action.
Mercier re-raises to 29 grand.
While the way the action has gone says this is an easy laydown, it's still never all that easy to lay down an overpair, especially as an amateur and you're assuming everyone's out to run you over. But right now, his pocket pair is jacked.
Literally. The amateur begrudgingly folds. And now Tony G. Middle set, facing a re-raise. Tony puts them all in.
Call.
Quick call from Jason.
Like a nerd with a hot chick's phone number, Mercier calls immediately.
Wow, what a flop.
Tony G would like to call this date off.
I just run it once.
They're going to run it once.
Nearly 250 grand in the middle.
Better for the TV viewer.
Good luck, boys.
Tony will need the board to pair.
It doesn't on the turn. 8 of spades.
I want to feel his heart rate, Jason.
Feel mine.
Yours, we're not, whatever, Yours is gonna ding, ding, ding. His is like ding, ding. Close your eyes, kid. You'll know by the reaction.
The river. The 6 of clubs. And Jason Mercier doubles up to 237 grand.
2 flops and been all in both times.
100, 113, 114, 3.
Tony G loses to a straight, and he's probably thinking Jason could go straight to a commercial break. Welcome back to Las Vegas, where Jason Mercier just doubled through Tony G. And Joe, Jason, truly one of this game's rising stars.
Doing pretty well for a 23-year-old. Jason hails from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's earned nearly $5 million in tournament winnings, and he's got 14 World Series of Poker cashes. I'd say he's building quite the resume. Tonight, he's up almost $137,000.
Action begins on a one-time young gun, Antonio Esfandiari, who folds.
He's not even that old. He's 31.
Action folds over to 25-year-old Ike Haxton. Raises to 1,600. Also suited with an ace. Mercier on the button.
Jason is in position. He probably won't fold. He could call, but he could also assume he's way ahead of Ike's cutoff range and raise.
Which he does to 5,700. Phil folds ace-10 suited.
I guess I'll call Phil's fold disciplined, even though it was the best hand.
The loose cannon's out. So back on over to Ike.
Ike doesn't look like he's folding. He knows Jason may not be putting him on a hand as good as an ace.
Haxton re-pops to almost 20 grand. And gets Mercier to fold.
Ike and Jason know each other pretty well, and Ike picked a good spot to play some power poker.
And he picks up a little more cash along the way.
If we take a look at our pre-flop win percentage, Ike Haxton is winning 22% of all pots without going to a flop. He's really applying pressure with a wide range of starting hands. On the other end, Mercier has had very mediocre hands and is perfectly content to win all of his money after the flop by cracking over pairs and getting it all in with the nuts.
Which is exactly what he did to Phil Hellmuth and Tony G, who will start off this hand. Tony began the evening with 500 grand in front of him. He's stuck over 130,000 and he folds. Ike, King 9.
Ike's looking like he wants to keep that pre-flop pressure on.
He does, raising to 1,500. Mercier folds. Phil calls with ace-jack. The cannon's out. Antonio folds.
Hellmuth's a pretty sizable favorite here.
The flop. 10-jack tray. Hellmuth flops top pair.
Hellmuth's way out in front. Let's see if Ike continues.
Action on Ike, who has a gut shot straight draw.
He's also got one overcard to Phil's pair.
Makes it 6,000 to go.
How much is out there?
Phil wringing his hands like a cartoon villain. I think he likes his top pair despite the overbet from Ike Haxton.
How much can he bet, dealer?
It's no limit.
It's no limit post-flop, Phil.
Shoot. Oh, jeez. Didn't want to call that much.
We're pot limit pre-flop and no limit post-flop. Phil's thinking about how he's got a red carpet later with Evander Holyfield and Daughtry.
7 of hearts on the turn.
Ike's now picked up a double gutter ball. An 8 or a queen would make him a straight.
He bets 15,000.
Ike's decided to semi-bluff here, knowing Phil could have called the flop with something as weak as ace-high.
Phil calls.
Phil decides he's probably not beating this spot.
The river. Deuce of hearts.
Changes nothing. Will Ike barrel?
Nope, he checks.
Looks like Phil's considering a value bet. It's not too scary of a board, but there aren't a lot of hands that will call him here that are worse.
Phil with top pair.
Looks like he's counting out chips anyway.
Bet 16,000.
This is a small bet, less than a third of the pot. Phil's made it as enticing as possible, but Ike still only got king high. I think a call here would be pretty bizarre. I could see Ike making a bluff raise before I see him looking Phil up with king high.
There are several hands I beat.
Not that many. Even if Phil were betting a busted straight or nut flush draw, he'd have Ike beat.
16.
Maybe Ike thinks he's caught Phil with his hand in the cookie jar, which is easy to do when you've got 11 gold bracelets on.
This is going to look rather dumb when I'm wrong.
Calls.
Ace-jack.
Ike just lost an arm and a leg, and now he can use that leg to kick himself.
Phil Hellmuth wins a pot of more than 78 grand.
I'd like to add on 50, dealer.
Haxton digs into his pocket for more cash. While you're at it, look for a hand that might actually have Phil beat. We'll return to Vegas with much more of the big game after this. Welcome back to the big game in Las Vegas, where our loose cannon this week is Russ Harlow, the father of 3 from Connecticut. And, well, he's going the wrong direction, Joe.
Nothing he can't recover from just yet.
It's hand 26 out of 150. Jason Mercier gets us going with a fold. Phil follows suit. King 7 for the cannon. Raising to 1,300.
Russ might be trying to work that quiet image, or he could just be bored.
Antonio with ace-5 on the button. Re-raises to 4,300. And now action folds back to the cannon.
Antonio has successfully isolated Russ. Now Russ has got a marginal hand and he's out of position.
That's a bad combination in this game.
You're learning every day, Chris Rose.
Russ wants to stick around. He makes the call.
Now, the problem is that the pot is bloated and Russ doesn't have a very strong hand.
He does now. King 4 king.
Not a problem anymore. Russ has picked a good time to get loose. Timing is everything.
And Harlow Hollywooding a bit. Fires 5,000.
Russ taking his time may look to Antonio like he's not sure about his hand. I'm not sure if it was intentional, but this half-pot bet is probably going to look weak as well.
Antonio raises to 17-4.
Antonio thinks he can blow Russ off his hand, and a lot of the time he'd be right, just not this time. Russ is poised to win a big pot here. Nadia Magnus is probably at home screaming at her television right now.
Of course, Nadia is the leading loose cannon at this point in the big game. And remember, the top earning loose cannon will get a $50,000 North American Poker Tour passport at season's end.
But right now, Russ is trying to figure out whether he should call or raise.
Just a call.
I like the call, but no matter what he does there, he's going to tip Antonio off that he's got a big hand.
9 of spades on the turn.
Betting would still be Russ's best chance of making some more money here. It's not likely Antonio would keep firing, though it's also not very likely he'd call another bet.
Harlow fires 20,000.
Another bet less than half the size of the pot. It may look weak to Antonio, but at this point he probably knows ace-high isn't the best hand. This would be an awfully gutsy bluff for an amateur.
Antonio's out of here. And the loose cannon, Russ Harlow, picks up a nice-sized pot.
A pot that puts him in the profits.
Nice hand.
Thank you.
Well, after one night of play, Jason Mercier is our big winner so far, up over 130 grand.
Some guy wearing a Phil Hellmuth disguise played his cards up to a $72,000 profit.
Our loose cannon has a healthy stack, up just shy of 7K.
And Ike, Antonio, and Tony G have some ground to make up as the week continues.
All right, guys, that was the last hand of the night. Russ, you're back over positive. Feeling good?
Absolutely. It's a good thing.
Okay. Phil, you're killing it. Jason?
I don't know about killing it, but he's killing it.
You're raking in the pots. I saw it.
I'm winning a lot of pots, but I mean, he just wins every hand he plays.
Against you?
Phil's
No,
won half
well,
the
yeah,
hands.
yeah. I mean, he plays 2 hands and wins them both and is up 150 like it's nothing. I mean.
All right, guys, that's it for tonight. I'm Amanda Leatherman saying goodbye for now. And remember, if you've got the cash and the guts, there's always a seat open at the big game. Good night, everybody.
For Joe Stapleton, I'm Chris Rose. We'll see you tomorrow night.
No lack of action today.
No.
Oh, God.
There's been a lot of big pots.
Yeah, there has. There's been a lot of action.
A lot of 3 and 4 betting.
Me paying Phil off with God knows what.
10 or 8.
The preceding was a presentation from PokerStars.com.